Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 10 o'clock here in the morning, Saturday morning, December 18th, and I'm happy to be here. This is Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse and Human Rights Abuses. And it's just a show I like to do, kind of, focusing on what's happening around the world with the issues of human rights abuses and child abuse. And this is a worldwide epidemic, not just North America. But I focus mainly on the national issues, and that's because this is where I live. But, it's so important to take a look at the whole worldwide issue of this horrible mess that people are in, you know what I mean? And it is a mess. And if, you want to count yourself very blessed if you're not in one of these situations. I know that I do. And so, but, we need to look at it. We need to talk about it. We need to get it out here where people are actually kind of, coming together and getting think tanks together to figure out what we're going to do. You know what I mean? We just can't leave it up to a handful of people and just say, well, let them deal with it. That's great because, that's what I was doing, about 4 years ago. And about 4 years ago, that's when I decided to get off the couch because I saw something on TV that just really bothered me. And I'd always been seeing stuff on TV that really bothered me about, abuses against humanity, right? And but this one particular show just got me, and it was a hidden camera that they had got snuck out of Afghanistan, and this woman was beaten by her husband with a rifle butt, and her whole face was caved in, half of her face. I mean, the other half was fine, but the other half was caved in. And I don't know if she survived. I mean, I would probably venture to say that she wouldn't have survived that because I don't know how anybody could survive a big gaping hole with their whole face busted, right? So I thought, well, and they were saying, there'd be no help for this woman. There'd be no pain medication. There'd be no hospital visit. She would just suffer like that, and her face would just have to heal like that. And I thought, oh my God, and it just bothered me because I looked at that woman and I could feel her pain, and I thought, oh my God, this stuff's been happening since time began, right? But it's just that it affected me at that point on that day enough to say, why am I not speaking out? Why am I not getting involved? I don't like what I see. I have a voice. I can use it. I've got a brain. I can use it. I've got resources. I've got some time. Why not? You know what I mean? And so whatever we have within our own capacity, really, that's what we got to do is get involved and do whatever we can within our own capabilities, right? So that's why I'm doing this. And it's just the more people we can get involved to raise their voice and speak out against this stuff, the better. That's the way it always has been, right? Handful of people willing to stand up for the rights of mankind, for the rights of men, women, and children, and there's always been a specific handful of people that will stand up and say, no, this is wrong, it's got to stop, and we have to change it. And I just want to be one of those people, so, that's why I'm doing these shows. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And I have emails that pop into my inbox regarding the international, issues of child abuse and child rights issues and human rights abuses and stuff. So I see this stuff coming into my inbox all the time, and I thought, I'll just do one show a week, to sort of talk about what's happening around the world. So that's what we're going to look at this morning. And the first article is from IRIN, IRIN, and that's the Humanitarian News and Analysis. It's a service of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And this just pops into my email, into my inbox, all the time, and I get these articles. And this one's from Papua New Guinea, and this particular article is just really just horrible. Mary Binney, quote unquote, my husband is a policeman. He shot at me twice. This is Highlands, December the 7th. So this is a couple weeks old. According to Amnesty International, 2/3 of the women in Papua New Guinea have been hit by their partners. In parts of the densely populated rugged provinces that comprise the highlands, that figure swells to nearly 100%. So they're just, it's a real problem in Papua New Guinea, obviously, right? I mean, and elsewhere too around the world, but Papua New Guinea, it seems to be a real issue. If all women, every single woman has been hit by their partners. It says Mary Binney and her 3 children have moved into her mother's home from where she spoke to IRIN, IRIN. She asked that her name and location not be published because she fears for her life. Her husband beats her with impunity. She says here, quote unquote, my husband is a policeman and he's an alcoholic. He's a good father. He gives us money, but he's always violent. After I gave birth to my first daughter, he started to beat me. So this is what she says here. She says, I've been to the hospital many, many times with a swollen face, a black eye, a bloody nose. This scar on my arm is from when he used a sharp piece of iron and stabbed me. Once he threw a stone at my head. I had to get 6 stitches. When he gets very angry at me, he beats my children too. So she says he's a good father, he gives us money. And yet, in her mind she thinks, oh, he's a good father, he gives us money. He's an alcoholic. And he's violent and he's abusive. And here she says he's a good father, he gives us money. That's her words. And she says, well, I had to get 6 stitches. When he gets very angry at me, he beats my children too. So he's obviously not a good father, right? And he's not a good husband. Any man who would do that to their wife or children is not a good man. And but people are warped, very psychologically, emotionally damaged, when they are living, in abuse, and especially if abuse is rampant in the community and it's just a small community of people and everyone seems to be abusing women and children, which can happen. Lots of countries are like that. They just think it's normal, but as long as they come home with the money to pay for the food, to continue to pay for food, shelter, if they bring home the money and they bring home the food, then supposedly they're like they're okay, they're a good husband, they're a good father, even if they do beat their wives and beat their children and do whatever they do to their family. It's absolutely horrific to think that people are still living that far back into the Stone Age, because honestly, like, this is almost 2011. We are a short few weeks away, or less than that, to the year 2011, and it's like, come on, wake up, smell the coffee, man. This is absolutely ridiculous that people around the world, even in North America, we have women that think it's okay for their husbands to beat them, right? It's so ignorant, it's so backwards, it's so elementary, Stone Age thinking, right? It's like, no, it is not okay. And women's rights activists, years and years and years ago, back with the suffragans and a whole bunch of people back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, went out and got our rights. And you know what? Women have rights, and even the UN, convention and the rights, human rights. Women are not to be used and abused. You know what I mean? And yet we still have a whole section of society and a whole section of our human culture, human being, community around the world that think it's perfectly okay to hurt women and hurt children. And then there's other women that think it's okay to hurt women, to hurt other people too, their husbands and children. So people are just sick in the head, sick and twisted. There's no excuse for this. We can talk all we want about the psychological blah, 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 right? And we can sit and we can just talk away about it. But the whole issue is it's wrong. It always has been wrong. Thank God people are standing up to say it's wrong, and thank God we have laws in place that say it's wrong. And, when it comes down to it, it's wrong, and everybody needs to check their own behavior, you know what I mean, and stop hurting each other. And it doesn't mean that every relationship's perfect and nobody's going to argue and people aren't going to get upset with each other, because that's normal. Anger is normal. Abuse is against the law, and it's wrong. You know what I mean? So, couples are going to have their issues, and, there's going to be some problems, but it doesn't have to come to people stabbing each other, throwing rocks at their wife and smashing their head and, beating on them, sending them to the hospital, beating on the kids. It doesn't have to come to that, and that is just a cop-out that people think that it's okay. There's a whole section of society that thinks, oh, well, that's just the way life is. Well, why? Do we not ever question why? If we stop questioning, and asking questions, we may as well just pack it up and go back and live in the caves and start dragging people around by their hair like those stupid cartoons portray. It's like, no, we've come this far. Why not? Let's just keep going, because education is very important, and ignorance is just kind of like whatever. People say ignorance is bliss, but it's not. It's complete stupidity. And it's like there's no reason why this should still be going on today with with the information that's out there. Even Papua New Guinea. The jungles of Papua New Guinea, people have the information. They know that abuse is wrong. So North America-wide, we all know abuse is wrong, but people continue to do it anyway. Domestic violence and abuse and sexual assaults, child sexual predators, parents abusing their children, caregivers. We all know it's wrong, but yet people are so ignorant that they think, oh, no, it's okay. It's perfectly fine what I do to my family, right? And that's just a real level of ignorance. And what do you do with those people? I mean, really, honestly, will they ever change their minds? Probably not. It's going to take a whole new generation to change this thing. That's what I say. And it's going to have to start with the young people. So she says here, many times he has pointed his gun at me, because he's a police officer, see. He shot at me twice at the floor just next to my foot. I just stood there crying. There was no one to protect me. Other policemen came, punched the door in, and stopped the fight, but my husband wasn't arrested. recently he has been going for mobile operations in other provinces, and he has been with other ladies. I've been tested 3 times for HIV. So far it has been negative. So she says, I always live in fear. He tells me he will kill me if I tell anyone. With other people, the police would make an arrest, but they won't do that to their comrades because he's a policeman, he's a police officer, right? And that's just the whole situation. I mean, it's the whole brotherhood, right? And that happens everywhere, North America too. So we know that that's an issue. And in these other countries, you can imagine there isn't really a whole lot of recourse. There's not a whole lot of justice for these people, right? Like because they're still living kind of back in the Stone Age days. You know what I mean? There's not any real level of education, and that's really what it takes. So, the more education people can get, the better off they are, you know what I mean? Because education really is everything. Because if we want to change this world, then you have to have some level of education to do that. Otherwise, you just live back and you're just living, by your family traditions and by your history. And if it was abusive, you're just going to live like that and continue it on, right? So education is everything. And so this is horrible. This woman, she says, I always live in fear. He tells me he will kill me if I tell anyone. With other people, the police would make an arrest, but they won't do that to their comrades. So this woman's just got to deal with this, you know what I mean? Because no one will bring, her husband up, to say, look, you got to stop your behavior, and whether she can press charges, who knows? Probably not, because this is Papua New Guinea we're talking about. And Papua New Guinea, I mean, they probably don't have very much set in place for victims and for, battered women and for abused children. You can imagine those countries, they just don't have that stuff set up, and because their culture just hasn't come that far as human rights goes, you know what I mean? And so, they probably think it's perfectly okay that this guy, just does what he does, you know what I mean? Even though the police stopped the fight, will they do anything with his husband? Probably not. She says here, I told his bosses last year, 2009, but they didn't do anything. So in April, I went to an organization that helps victims of domestic violence and to the public solicitor's office here. After 10 years of this, now it's too much for me, so I had to tell someone about my problems. So she told Amnesty International. That's who actually she was talking to her here in this article, right? So she says, when it comes to husband and wife relations, men in Papua New Guinea are not good. When we are young, it's happy like sugar. Then after a child or two, it becomes bitter. And that's what she says here. So, yeah, it's a little, a lot of these countries, women just don't have the same protection, the same rights that we do, you know what I mean? You look around the world, and, especially the situations in so many countries. I mean, even countries where you would think that women have rights, they don't have rights. And, Mexico is a big one. Mexico is part of North America, right? Nobody wants to consider Mexico part of North America. They want to consider it to be Central America or South America, but it's not. It's part of North America. And Mexico has some huge problems with child abuse and domestic violence. Mexico is actually, I lived on the border of Mexico. And, I love the culture and I love those people. I lived there 30 years of my life. And I had lots of Mexican friends, and I love the food and I love the culture, but parts of their culture are still so backward, and it's like they don't want to change their own laws. They don't want to see anything change. And even the women don't mind being treated the way they are. And I used to run into women that were abused and they were, Mexican heritage, right? And they would be like, well, this is just the way life is. This is the way I live. This is the way my grandma lived, my mom lived. This is what men do. They abuse their women and children, right? And then the women generally abuse their children too. Mexico is one of the most ignorant, backward places on the continent. And that's, that's coming from somebody who knows, because I've been down there. I've been in, not to Acapulco, you know what I mean? I never went to any of the resorts. I was down in Mexico, where there's no streets, there's no pavement, the towns are just, sheds and dirt streets and chickens running around and kids running around. There's no education, right? There's no level of education for those people. And they're so poor that, they just think it's okay to do whatever they want to do to children and to do to their wives, you know what I mean? Generally, it's the men beating up on the women. I mean, I'm sure that some of the women actually do get a hold of their husbands or their men and beat on them too, but it's a very violent culture, and they've got a lot of problems, and that's Mexico. That's part of North America, man. And even, here we have in our own countries, United States and Canada, this whole issue that people still think it's okay to batter each other and beat on their kids and sexually use their children and exploit them. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Why I don't mind speaking out. I'll just keep doing it because it doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? I have nothing better to do with my time. You know what I mean? I do, but the whole issue is I feel that it's worth it. It's worth it to be one more voice, and I'm going to plan on doing a whole lot more writing. I plan on getting a lot more involved. You know what I mean? This last year has been awesome. It's sort of been a catalyst for me, and that's because Dream Catchers for Abused Children has really, given me a gift, which is to be allowed to be a part of their organization and volunteer with them. And what they've done is they put a whole lot of trust in my abilities and a whole lot of trust in the work that I do. And it's really given me it's like a catalyst to propel me to go to the next level with them. You know what I mean? And also even on a personal note. So it's like, wow, this is amazing. And so, I have nothing, I can't think of anything that's more worth it to me than to make a difference in this world. And so that's what I'm saying. I hope everybody will get on board in whatever way that you can, because it does make a difference. You don't have to go, vocal like me. You don't have to go public like me. You don't have to try to, my whole goal is to do public speaking, and I want to go national. I want to go international. I want to go public speaking on public speaking tours around the world. So in order to do that, and I want to go as I am. I'm not going to try to pull myself off as somebody, who's got a doctorate and who's, speaking a bunch of fancy words. I'm talking, just person to person, normal people to normal people. You know what I mean? And this is an issue of the heart. And I thought, I have nothing better to do with my time than go out and try to make a difference in this world. But, you don't have to do what I'm doing, which is to try to get into public advocacy, which will be, public speaking tours and getting involved with, getting the whole awareness going for, publicly. But, get involved wherever you can, even in your local communities, to make a difference, because every single person who stands up for what's right, you know what I mean, and who speaks out against what is wrong makes a difference. You think about everybody that changed the laws for women years ago. Had those women not stood up, and some men too, had they not stood up and gone against the grain of society and gone against the laws, and they took on the government is what they did. They took on governments worldwide, actually, is what they did, and they got women's rights. Right, for us, right? Then it was the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and a whole lot of people started speaking up for children, so that children could be considered persons, because children were just considered property, right? So were women, right? But now we are people, we are persons, and we have rights. And so it's very important to do whatever you can to uphold those rights and uphold the laws and uphold the rights of the child and human rights, right? We need to, because if we don't, we'll lose them. And because that's what happened in Afghanistan. I mean, Afghanistan is just a perfect example. I study Afghanistan, so I kind of, that's why I use Afghanistan for an example, because it is really the worst place in the world to live right now. It's actually the number one worst place for a woman to live. Not necessarily children, but women. If you're a woman in Afghanistan, you're screwed. And I'm a woman. I care about those women. You bet I do. And I have a lot of friends over there. I support women in Afghanistan. If I do all I can, really, to be a voice for them, because they have no voice and they are murdered and killed every day just for being a woman, and it makes me sick to my stomach. It has nothing to do with their religion. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with their beliefs. What it is the Taliban, decided to make up their own rules and twisted the Quran. And there's a whole lot of people that back them up because they want to keep women squashed under their thumbs. They think it's great. This way they could use and abuse their women and kill them, and it doesn't matter. They can just move on, right? So they're allowed to kill their women. They're allowed to just do whatever they want to their women, because women have no rights. They have less rights than an animal does, right? So which means none. They have zero rights. So it's very important to get educated, know what's happening around the world, and then do something to help somebody. You know what I mean? Because this is absolutely sickening and ridiculous. So the whole issue is if we don't stand, the Constitution of Afghanistan, they have rights written in there. Women's rights are listed in the Constitution of Afghanistan, but because nobody upholds them, and the courts don't uphold it, the laws don't uphold it, the police officers don't uphold it, no one upholds it. So therefore, do the women have rights? No, they don't. because no one's going to stand up for them, and no one's going to uphold the laws, uphold the rights of the women in Afghanistan, even though they're written right into the Constitution. So you can see it there. It's very important to know this stuff and get educated. And I mean, I don't even have time, like I really wish that I did, to educate myself even further. You know what I mean? I keep trying and I work on it every day. But I mean, there's so much that we all need to learn, and so much if we're going to change this world, so much we need to learn, so much we need to do. All of us can play a part. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have doctorates and master's degrees and stuff like that, but I'm a voice and I can write. And thanks to Donna Shear, first of all, for seeing my book and saying, my blog, and saying, hey, that should be a book. We've got to keep writing. And thanks to Sandra Potter for encouraging me to keep writing. You know what I mean? Because between Donna Shear and Sandra Potter, they have given me a voice, right? Because in writing, because they've allowed me to publish. They've published my work. So and they just keep encouraging me to keep doing this, right? So that's what I keep saying. I just keep pushing this out to everybody else, encouraging people, do whatever you can in your own capabilities, And that's the whole thing. I plan to do a whole lot more work in the future, and it will almost all of it comprise of child rights and human rights issues. And I'm going to write for, just to write fictional stories and whatnot, and stories based on truth as well. But I also want to do some serious writing. And that's going to come up here in the future. So, I mean, thanks to those guys for believing in me enough to allow me the opportunity and the chance to, to work with them and to make a difference in this world, right? Because that's what they're doing. That's what Sandra Potter did when she created and founded Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She could have just walked away from it, you know what I mean, and just had her own private life. But no, she cared enough about the situation, worldwide situation of child abuse, so that children are being abused, and she cares about the survivors. She cares about everybody. She's just a caring woman, and she could have just easily just walked away from this whole thing after her own daughter had been abused, and she could have just said, I don't have to deal with this. We're just going to go on and have our own life and move on. And instead of that, she created Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, 501c3 not-for-profit, in order so that no child should ever suffer again. I mean, that's what it takes. It takes people like Sandra Potter. It takes people like Donna Shear coming right beside her at 4 years ago when it first started to say, hey, I'd like to help you if I can, right? That's what it takes. Donna Shear is a best-selling author, and Donna Shear could have just said, oh, well, I don't care about that stuff. I'm just going to continue to write, and I'm just going to, I'm going to focus on me and my family, right? That's what Donna Shear could have said, because Donna Shear's a mother as well. And Donna Shear could have just said, oh, well, it doesn't matter to me that the world's suffering. I'm just going to make my money. I'm a best-selling author, and I can just keep on writing because she is an awesome writer. And it's like she instead of that, she's like, no, I'm gonna do all I can to help make it so that no child should ever suffer again. I mean, this is what it takes, people. It takes normal people like you and me to stand up and say, hey, I can get involved. I can do something, right? I can change I can change this world. One person can change the world. You bet they can. You look at Martin Luther King. He was just a normal person. You know what I mean? Just like you and me. He had to go to the bathroom, you know what I mean? He probably had times when he had headaches. He had toothaches, I'm sure of it. He had issues in his life. He's just a normal human being. But look what he did, because he says, I have a dream. And I got a voice, and I got, we can, see, that's what I'm saying. These are just normal people who wanted to change the world for the better. And we all can do that. Every single one of us, in our own way, make a serious impact on the situation and really change this thing. But it will take all of us, and we all need to get involved, right? So step up where you can, get involved where you can, right? So I want to just take a look at another article. We have time for one more, I think, and there's so many, it's absolutely ridiculous. But this one is really sad, and this one is from IRIN, the IRIN, Humanitarian News and Analysis. Bangladesh, when sexual harassment leads to suicide. This is from Dhaka, posted December 13th, 2010 by IRIN. And they said here, sexual harassment against girls and women in Bangladesh is turning deadly. 28 women have committed suicide this year, and another 7 attempted it to escape frequent sexual harassment, says a Dhaka-based human rights organization, Ain O Salish Kendra. A father also committed suicide fearing social insult after his daughter was harassed, and in other cases, stalkers killed 3 women, reported the NGO. According to the Bangladesh National Women Lawyers Association, almost 90% of girls aged 10 to 18 years have experienced what is known locally as eve teasing, where boys intercept girls on the street and shout obscenities, laugh at them, or grab their clothes. Eve teasing has escalated ever since girls and women started entering formal education and employment in large numbers in the 1980s, and Paul Subrata Malakar from the NGO Plan International in Dhaka, this is what he said, that Paul Subrata Malakar, this is eve teasing, where women are sexually harassed, and, girls, and they said really 90% of the girls aged 10 to 18 have experienced this locally known eve teasing. So this is in Bangladesh, right? So that's horrible, and that people are committing suicide over it. Young women are committing suicide. 28 women that this year committed suicide. Another 7 attempted it, and even a father committed suicide because he just couldn't deal with the social insult after his daughter was harassed. This is serious stuff, man. And people would think, well, why can't they just get over it? No, it's not as easy as that, because with their culture, when you grow up believing a certain way and feeling and thinking a certain way, it's not as easy just to say, that how they should just be able to get over it. No, because their whole belief system, doesn't allow for this kind of stuff, right? Impacts. On the 16th of November, Sharmin, a 20-year-old student in Dinanpur, which is 40 kilometers northwest of Dhaka, was returning home from college when a stalker forcibly held her hand and tried to hug her. Since then, her parents say she has stopped going to college. As sexual violence is happening on the way to school, it will panic parents, and the parents will discourage their daughters from going to school, said Rekha Saha, director of Dhaka-based NGO Steps Towards Development. In a country where 1.5 million girls out of 10.4 million eligible are not enrolled in school, so what's that? That's 1.5%. 1.5 million girls out of 10.4 million eligible girls go to school, are not enrolled in school. So that's not good. An unknown number are avoiding school out of fear and humiliation of daily harassment. And it says since January of this year, ASK has received 61 complaints from girls who had dropped out of school because they were harassed. Moreover, in a country where more than 64% of girls marry before they are 18, some parents have pushed their eve-teasing victims into early marriage to protect their honor and safety, said Malakar and Saha. So that's just not good either, right? And causes, it says Ishrat Shamim, a gender studies expert and professor of sociology at Dhaka University, is calling for further investigation into the causes of the rise in violence against women. The mindset of both men and women is important. Many men, also women, believe women are second-class citizens after men. And while women's participation in education, the labor force, and other activities is increasing, men are not yet so to get used to seeing women outside the home, right? They're not yet used to seeing the women working outside the home or going to school, right? Changing this mindset has proven to be a long-standing obstacle. And this is the problem, really. I'm throwing this in here right now because we only have a couple minutes left. And the whole issue is that these societies, until they change the way they feel about women and children, there won't be much people can do. We need to stand up and keep fighting for it, and that's what these people are doing. And if you ever get a chance to read about some of these cases in Afghanistan, where I'm just pointing this out because I read a whole lot about Afghanistan. But there's a book out. I'm going to try to find it. I'll try to get that information for you, and I'll mention it on another show if I can. I read this book, and I can't remember what it was called. It's been a long time now. But this book, the cases, it was all women's stories, and these women that had been killed and murdered in Afghanistan for speaking up and for standing up. But what they did was, people say, well, that's stupid. They gave their lives for that, But really what they did is they knew that whether they died or lived, something had to be done. And this is why people are going to war right now. This is why there's young men and women everywhere, and even older men and women fighting for what we believe is right. You know what I mean? And in the midst of it, there's a whole mess of wrongs. There's a whole mess of bad stuff, right? But the whole concept that that women are second-class citizens and that they should be treated however they're treated. This is ridiculous. And the thing is that until people in around the world change the way they feel about women and children, and people in relationships change the way they treat each other and the way they feel about each other and the children, this stuff isn't going to change. And so it's very important that we all stand up and make some noise. You know what I mean? So you can go in and check these articles out. Just go to IRIN, IRIN. Just type into your browser IRIN, humanitarian news. It's the coordination of the UN humanitarian affairs. You know what I mean? Go just check this out, because there's all kinds of articles on that website every day. I mean, these are just a handful that pop in, and I only chose certain topics. This is it's the news for the humanitarian, it's the humanitarian news and analysis for the UN Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. So there's everything to do with human rights and humanitarian issues on this website. So if you just type into your browser IRIN, you can get all this information there, right? And there's a lot of good information there, and I hope everybody will go check it out, right? So we have about a couple, maybe like a minute left. Thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Take good care of yourselves. Have a great weekend, and then check it out. Look around in your own local communities and do whatever you can to get involved to stop domestic violence, stop child abuse within your own areas. To help victims and survivors, to be a voice, right, for these people, because their voices were taken away and they don't have a voice. So it's very important that we be their voice, right? So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.